All right, sweet. Hello, everybody. How are you? Welcome to the final session of day one. Hope everybody had a good con so far. This is a panel. It's called Different Ways to Control Your Layout. This is going to be, I guess, part funny intro, part demo, and then quite a lot of Q&A. So hopefully you guys have a lot of questions. I have a hashtag set up, DrupalCon layout. It's on the slides. Hopefully, I will be able to collect them here as long as the Wi-Fi stays up. So, layouts are something that are near and dear to all of our hearts here. Everybody here has been working in Drupal for many years. And over the centuries, we've come up with a lot of different approaches for how to control the layouts on your Drupal sites. Hopefully long gone are the days with your layout all hard-coded in page.tpl or node.tpl or maybe even some other crazy way. But the tools that we're going to be talking about here today, I would say, represent kind of the leading edge of how people have been doing layouts in Drupal over the past probably 4 or 5 years. Some are more recent than others, but panels I believe started back in the Drupal 4 days. Context had its beginnings in Drupal 5, Display Suite Drupal 6, template field Drupal 7, and then we have guys on the panel here to talk about Drupal 8 as well. So we'll probably cover a little bit of the past and a whole lot of the future, but mostly future. The choice of layout managers, if you've spoken to enough people over time, is something of a religious war. People get divided into camps, and their layout manager is way better than somebody else's, and the things that it does that are the quirks that most people hate are the things that other people love. So thankfully, I'm not really into any particular religion, and through the relentless badgering of Matt and Sam and Kris, myself, who was historically in the context camp, has come over and played in the panels world. We've even done crazy things like wrote something called custom page in Drupal 6, which I wouldn't recommend anybody use. But at least for me personally, I feel like I've built sites in every different layout manager. They all have their pluses and their minuses. And when Munich was approaching at the last DrupalCon, we thought it would be a really good idea to get everybody together who works on these various tools and get them in one place, allow people to ask questions, let them kind of ask and answer each other's questions and kind of see how it goes. We thought it was a big success, and we said, let's do it again for Portland. So here we are. So let's do well, before we get into, be sure to go and evaluate the session. Hopefully, you've had a really good time. So this is me. I'll be the moderator today. I won't really be answering many questions, but I'll be asking a lot. But hopefully not too many if you guys have plenty of stuff. I'm the founder, one of the founders in CTO of Phase 2. Do things like Open Publish and Open Public. I've been a maintainer on features and context, modules like the Akamai module. And like I said, I've used almost every layout manager there is. I love each of them and I hate each of them. And hopefully we'll get into some of the details of that. So next is Kirstof.
Good evening. My name is Kirstof. I'm a Drupal developer at Moderator in Belgium, and well, you probably might know me as Wendel on Drupal.org and also on Twitter and pretty much everywhere on the internet. I'm a Drupal 8 core maintainer for Field API and Field UI, which is sometimes a really hard job, but it's really fun, especially to be working with Whitechat, the lead maintainer of Field API. And I'm also the lead maintainer of this Display Suite. And is Christopher seen by any chance in this room, or apparently not? Christopher is the Drupal 6 branch maintainer of Display Suite, and I'm really grateful for that. This year I need to drink a beer with him because he's from Australia, I'm from Belgium. That's a long distance from each other, and we only talk on IRC or on Twitter or whatever. So Display Suite, there are a lot of reasons why we start writing Display Suite. The 3 main reasons for Display Suite basically are, first of all, PHP template. So my front-end developers at work, they speak fluently JavaScript and CSS and all that stuff. But when it comes to PHP, and especially the way that Drupal builds its data, it's kind of hard to get into it. And one of the things then is I used to be the one that had to master template files because I knew how Drupal built its data structures and stuff like that. And yeah, it gets kind of boring after a while. And so that was reason really number one. I basically also didn't trust him with PHP. So there's security issues with PHP template, which hopefully will go away in Drupal 8 with 3. So maybe display sheet won't exist anymore because my front-end developers really like Twig and they want to mess with template files again. That's a possibility. Reason number two is maintainability. You can create a lot of template files, and especially when the site is live, when you have to make some adjustments to them, you really have to make sure you open up every template file where you have some kind of data that you need to change for a new project, or for a live project, sorry. And third, the FCLUI. In Drupal 6, it was CCK. It wasn't really that flexible. It was crap, basically, because you only could configure the field API fields. And we also wanted to have control over, like, say, the node title or the author and stuff like that. So those are really the three main reasons why I wrote Display Suite together with all my colleagues. Oh, I'm still on? Okay.
The silence are coming, that's all.
Okay. I'm still there?
Hello? Hello?
Nope. Okay.
But the mics are gone now.
Mics are gone.
Did you lose yours, Frank?
Yeah. Can people still hear? Okay.
Okay. Okay, we're back. No problem. So those were the three main reasons why we wrote Display Suite. And I'll be giving a short demo after all the other ones haven't introduced themselves. And I hope we get some questions. So thank you.
So next is Brian McMurray.
Hi everybody, I'm Brian McMurray. I'm a software architect at Phase 2. Today I'll be telling you a bit about a strategy we call single page or single node layouts. It's a combination of a few modules that we've created. One's called template field, another's called beam. Can you hear me better now? Yes. This is also a Verizon commercial. Yeah, so I'll be talking about single node layouts and some of the strategies for the reasons why we came up with these methods, some of the reasons for why I think it's an interesting and a strong solution, and give you a quick demo of how we're using it on one site called robinhood.org. They're a nonprofit organization in New York, and we'll show you how flexible that's been for them. You'll actually get a chance to learn a whole lot more about that on Thursday when I'll be on another panel to talk about actually building our own product. So looking forward to sharing with you.
So next is Matt.
Hey, my name is Matt Cheney, and I fell in love with the panels module a number of years ago, and haven't really looked back. I'm a big believer in awesomeness, and I think panels very much is, to me, sort of the heart and soul of what Drupal should be. That when I came into Drupal, I wanted to have tools to make websites, and I wanted to have my friends have tools to make websites. And I definitely became frustrated with having to write a lot of code to do really basic things like change the layout or make layouts and stuff like this. And panels, to me, has always been a solution that helps to level up Drupal and lets you, in the UI, do a whole lot of things from controlling the way your content works, to setting access rules, to obviously changing layouts. And so I've been doing Drupal 6-7 years now, and my current gig is a co-founded company called Pantheon, which is all about trying to make really awesome Drupal sort of platform technology for people. And the idea here is that I think in several years in the future that Drupal will run 10 times the websites we're running. And I think together we need really great hosting technology, but we also need really great tools like panels and abilities to change the layout. And one of the things I put together really helped to kind of sell this is a distribution of Drupal for Drupal 7 called Panoply that basically takes all the best practice panels magic and chaos tools magic that I'm aware of that bundles it together in a way that you can download and you can use as your own site or a totally new distribution. And it has a lot of great ways to sort of control how the layouts work. And so I'll be talking a little bit about how panels uses the sort of layout plugins to
talking a little bit about context and how it can be used to control your layout. It actually started with Drupal 6 and a company called Development C started development there. And it's not solely a layout control tool. It has a lot of flexibility and functionality that isn't related to layout, but one of the most popular uses of it is for blog placement. And there's also some conditions and reactions that you can do to adjust how your pages display. And so I'll be giving a demo of that on a slightly modified version of our public distribution.
Next is Kris.
I'm Kris. I'm HSBC on Drupal.org. One of the initiative owners of the Scotch Initiative, same thing together. I will be kind of walking you through some things that we're doing in Drupal 8 and how they relate to the technologies in Drupal 7 that we showed today. And we'll just kind of try to paint a picture of what it is that we're trying to do, how we're trying to support these solutions going forward.
Next up is Sam.
I'm Sam Boyer, SD Boyer on Drupal.org and everywhere else. As Kris said, I'm the other co-lead of the Scotch Initiative for Drupal 8. You won't see me on the schedule because they had the foresight to realize that when they did a session like this in Munich, I just bombed the thing and took mics away and thought, stage put me on stage this time, that's why I'm not there. I'm going to try to not get out on a soapbox about what we're trying to do with Drupal 8, but chances are it's going to happen.
I brought the soapbox.
Excellent.
This is a stage full of soapboxes. So, these guys are now going to go through and give you a little bit of a demo of their solution. As you come up with questions, if you want, just shoot them out to DrupalCon Layout on Twitter, and I'll be monitoring that, and we could get the questions to the panel later. Somebody brought this to me beforehand. I forgot to mention it. Tonight at 7:30 in the Coders Lounge at the DoubleTree Hotel, they're going to do a Codathon for Oklahoma tornado support. So that's 7:30 tonight at the Coders Lounge in the DoubleTree Hotel. They're going to be trying to get together and organize teams to help create apps to help those that have been victimized. So thanks. So with that, let's get into some of the demos.
All right, so
Did the screen switch?
Yeah. Do you see an admin module page right now? Okay, great. All right, so display suite is a module it's a content module, of course, so you have to download it. When you download it, you get a set of modules. There's a display suite core module, which does most of the heavy leverage for layouts and stuff like that. There's display suite extras that contains all of the kind of cool little stuff that you can enable or you can disable. It depends on the use cases. And there's also display suite search, which I'll be showing in a couple of minutes. And there's also a display suite UI. You don't have to enable UI. UI is mainly for creating new view modes, new fields. But I suggest doing that mostly doing by code. That's actually what we do. So when you enable display suite, if you go to the main overview page, what you get there is an overview of all entities in your Drupal 7 installation. And I guess compared to the other solutions that we have here, Display Suite does not actually do something with your page layout. Display Suite works on the entities. And we have something that is called view modes in core. A view mode is something like a full version of your node. And you also have teaser. Core comes with search index, search result, and do we have something else? I think something like book and teaser, right? And you can create your own view modes if you like. So that's what you get. And it works on every entity that you enable in your Drupal 7 installation. So what we have here is content, taxonomy terms, users, and comments. But it also works on the B module. It actually also works on fieldable panel things, and it also works with entity construction kit, for instance. So you don't have to actually write anything, just enable a module that has an entity, and you're pretty much good to go. So when you actually click on Manage Display here, you go to Field UI. Field UI is a core module, which you probably all use. You mostly go to Manage Fields probably to add new fields onto your entities. And what Display Suite does is it goes to Manage Display, and it actually extends it. So what you see here right now is just only the field API fields. And what we do in Display Suite is we add a new tab at the bottom where you can just select a layout. So at this point, Display Suite ships with a couple of default layouts. You can create your own layouts if you like to. If you have panels enabled, you can also select the panel layouts in here. So depending on the way that you build your website, you can actually just enable Page Manager and panels, and you can also use those templates files. So you get consistency with the way that your layouts are built up. So what I'm going to do is just now select a 2-column layout, get a nice preview. That's something that is new in the second branch. You click on Save. What happens is that you now also get a lot of new fields. It's something that's it's an API in Display Suite. It enables you to control the properties on your entities, properties like the title. And it also adds formatters. I mean, you can select whether the title needs an H2 or an H3 or things like that. And you can also, if you're a developer, add new properties, or you can just add anything on it and display whatever you like. So also, you get regions on the screen. You get now a left and right region, so just start dragging around a little bit, and image style is on medium. Click Save, and this is how a normal Drupal core installation works. It doesn't really look that fancy. If I reload the screen, you get this. It's really easy. It swaps template files. That's the core main thing that Display Suite does. It swaps template files for your entities. And you can basically do the same for teasers. So I go to the home page. This is actually a view that takes over the node listing page. You get a list of teasers. You just basically go to teaser, and for the sake of the demo, also we'll select a 2-column layout. Just start dragging around a little bit, and let's put the body here. Now on teasers, no template file contains a title string, and we want to replicate that. So we have a title right here. I can put it on top of the image. The wrapper is H2. Hit save, reload the screen, and now it looks like this. So one important thing, it's not a CSS tool or something like that. You still have to write a little bit of CSS, like in every website, I guess. So if you have support questions regarding CSS, I mostly will close them in the issue queue, or ask my funny colleagues to answer them. So this is a really easy way to quickly and have a consistent way of theming or like controlling the layout of entity view modes. Now, we also have views integration in that sense. If I go to the edit of the view, we have a Display Suite role plugin, which has some additional functionalities. And the most use case that we're using for, we have an alternating view mode. And what this does is, for instance, if you have 10 nodes on the list, you can basically say, okay, the first one has to be a full content view mode, the second one needs to be a teaser, and so on and so on and so on. And it's really easy. I can't even remember how I did that in the past. It probably was a lot of hacking or some if-else statements in template files or things like that, and counting and statics and whatever. This is really easy right now. So where's the save button? Okay, it's right here. And yeah, okay, so I use a 2-column layout. For both, we have a really easy contextual link right here, so I could, it's not good. I'll go to default, sorry.
Live demo.
Yes, they always go wrong. Let me switch to, I'll just add another field to it, so basically I can see the difference. Right, so here's the author. So you can easily switch between this, between view modes. Now, one of the hardest things in Drupal core, or at least what we found hard, is theming search results. If I would just search for some word, then you get this, well, like formatted stuff and things like that. Display Suite contains a module, Display Suite Search, which allows you to take over this page. And it works for core search. It also works for Apache Solr. It doesn't work yet for Search API because at this point we don't use it. And usually I only commit stuff, or at least I work on stuff that we use at work. Of course, if anyone is interested in using Search API and give me patches, I will happily commit it. So what you have to do is go to search settings. We have a new search info stuff. It calls display suite search, and that's now the default search module. And if I hit, then you get nice search results. And you can actually, what you see here now are 2 articles. The third one is a page, and I can now also go to the manage display of the page, and then we have nice search results for pages as well. And it's really easy, and you only have to do some CSS stuff, and you're done basically. So that's a really short demo of how display suite works, and we'll go over to the next one.
Brian's up next.
All right. So this is, I'm going to run through a couple of quick slides that will auto-advance every 10 seconds. So maybe I'll keep up and maybe I won't. Can you see the slides or do you see the admin?
Yeah, this is single node layout.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about single node layouts. The place that this came out of is we needed to be able to do a lot of things to our display, our designs. We needed to revision all of the things, translate them all. Man, this is really fast. I'm going to go back. Revision them all, translate everything, and they needed to be really highly custom on a per page basis. And we wanted to be able to do all of that without using a developer every single time a new design came in. New code would need to be added to a theme or pushed into the repository and deployed live. We didn't want to have to do code deploys every single time. So here's a couple of quick little wireframe examples. So maybe these are the same, 2 different pages on your website. They've got similar types of content, and but they look very different. What we started asking ourselves is, in the past we would create all these different fields, and maybe we'd throw together some quick tabs blocks or a views block or a views slideshow and all these different things, and we'd end up with lots of different content types with various different fields, and we'd spend a lot of time theming them. On one site, I think we had 4 different types of blog content so that they could have different features. So we started asking ourselves, what if we created something that let us control each of those little layouts, and we called them templates, individually? And so we created a template field. And then we asked ourselves, well, what if we could create flexible layouts that would have extra options in them to be able to share similar things, so content and images. So this is a quick example of robinhood.org. They're a nonprofit foundation in New York. They've got some really highly designed content here. In fact, they had large images, they had large text, and then they would have interactive content. So this piece here that looks like a city skyline is actually an interactive piece. You can roll over those little bar graph pieces and get new pieces of information. In the past, you would have to have a custom content type with hundreds of fields or something to be able to control all of that data, or it would just be a Flash piece that had an XML file somewhere. We wanted to be able to change all of that, control it all the same way. So that's where template field came from. Template field is a module you can get on Drupal.org. It's an API first, and then it comes with a pluggable rendering system, and then we actually wrote a module called template field that makes it exist as a field instance. So the API is what controls the ability to create these templates, which is a package of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which Drupal libraries you might want to include that are already existing within the system, and a set of inputs which are configurable, customizable data input areas. The rendering library that we're using is called Mustache. Mustache is a really neat little templating library. They're called logicless templates. It's super easy. If you can read this example here that's up on screen, it's very straightforward. It's nothing like PHP template. This would be something that a content editor, a business writer could look at and understand how to use. As long as they were given what those input names should be, they could write these themselves. And actually on some client sites, their design team knows HTML but doesn't know PHP. So they could write HTML mustache templates, input in the input names, and then they can do that without needing a developer to take care of it for them. This is an example of the admin. It's not much to look at. It's basically the ctools export UI because all of these are ctools exportables. When you're creating a new template, you've got a number of options here. You can add your machine names and tags, which I'll talk a little bit more how that's interesting in a minute. Then you can also go in, you can add custom HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and pick from a list of all the libraries that are available in Drupal to bundle with this template. And then you can go and you can add template definitions. As I said before, this is an example of sort of the quick HTML template that you might use for something. So what this is showing here is that you've got a couple of different inputs, a text input, an image input, and an image position input that actually just sets a class on something. This is pretty straightforward and fairly non-complicated to get a handle on. These map directly to these template names, these input names that you configure. So here we've got text input that's going to be a rich text area, WYSIWYG text area when it's encountered in the node admin UI, an image area that's going to be a file upload field, an image position which is actually a select box that's going to just give you a few predefined options. So you can put all these things together. You can declare all this in the admin UI, or it's also available to do in code. I prefer to do it that way. There's a nice hook built into the module that you can write an admin or a custom module for your site, declare all of your templates, and then they're just there. But if you've got content teams that are creating new templates as the site lives on, they can do it within your website without needing code deploys. So here's a quick screenshot of what it might look like on the most basic level. This is that same input that that same template that we just defined. You've got an option here to pick from your different templates that are available in the system. This one I called image and text. It's got the text area that's filtered HTML, formatted text, an image upload, an image position select box so that you can build that really simple thing. What we found with this, particularly in the Robinhood site, and I'd encourage you to come to our talk to hear a whole lot more about this, is that we're putting WYSIWYG into all of these text areas. And so here's a quick look at what the different layouts that we created for Robinhood are. They look probably pretty similar to what panels might look like if you've used panels before. These are pretty standard, just stacked layouts. But there are two extra ones here. These are our custom interactive ones, bubbles and city stats, that are sort of our fun names for them. Those are the exact same system as everything else, but they handle very delicate, customizable interactive stuff, and then all of that's actually rendered out using Raphael.js and SVG to create those really interactive graphics. Here's a quick screenshot. I'm going to actually show you this in a live demo in a second of one of those fields on the Robinhood site with WYSIWYG in here. You're probably asking, well, what about reusable components? Like, what if you want to add blocks, or what do you do with blocks and beans, and what's even a bean? And a bean is a funny name for a module that stands for block entities aren't nodes. Basically, it turns your blocks into entities that are just like nodes in Drupal. That means that you can define block types and then create multiple instances, and those can be revisioned and put through a workflow system just like any node in your site, which also means they're translatable very easily. In this case, in the Robinhood site, we also use the embeddables module that allows content editors to create these beans, these reusable widgets, and then embed them into their WYSIWYG text to get really complex, interesting designed layouts. So why use single node layouts? You get custom layouts on a per node basis. You get really easy templating language that people who are unfamiliar with Drupal theming can use. It works with all of your revision, workflow, and translation systems. and it's far fewer fields. You don't need to create lots of different content types to handle all these different really complex data things that you want to collect, which all end up actually being called content. Here's this one little slide I call it double rainbow time, and this is because what's really interesting about template API is that templates can actually be used to format template fields. What does it mean? So if you add a tag to those templates that you're creating and you call it formatter, then automatically your template shows up as a field formatter option for any template field in the system. So we've used this on sites to create templates that are just simple slideshow or carousel sorts of things, you know, where it's got a custom layout. It throws in the JavaScript to do a simple jQuery cycle or those sorts of slideshow libraries. And then we have a multi-value template field instance on one content type. You just add many different, totally different template field values to that one field. And then when it renders out, it's a magical slideshow on your node. And so that's super complex. I'd love to talk to you a little more about it. I'm not going to show you that because it's definitely hard to wrap your head around, but template API is super powerful, and it's more than just existing as a field. It can be used to influence how fields themselves are output. Again, come see us on Thursday to learn more about Robinhood. Let me show you Robinhood real quick. Yeah. What do you see now? You see Robinhood.org? All right. Let me show you just super quick what one of these looks like. Here is one of our example things. This is an interactive city stats template. And if I just use the contextual links and jump in here. It's running locally. You'd think it'd go super fast.
You can do it.
And the demo gods are going to curse me. All right, well, I won't take up all of our time waiting for this computer to think. Oh, of course, there it goes. All right, super quick. Here's the layout. We've got city stats here. It's a top content. This WYSIWYG stuff you can do anything you want here. We use a little JavaScript to change the background color of the WYSIWYG area to match the background color that you pick. And then we've got all of these stat bars. We've got one for each of those little pieces. You can upload an icon, title, and a description for each one. So you can do all this stuff. You know, this isn't a true infographic. It's a marketing piece of content. You can do all this content. All of this is contained within the template. So here I can actually flip open our template chooser. I'm going to pick something different. All of this is going to go away, and we're replaced with just just this template's new layout areas. We can add some new stuff, and I'll just make it big enough that you can see it. And save it, and then we've got an updated, funnily displaying, but updated template area inside of these pages, and that's what's really cool about this site. It's super flexible, and content editors, love it because of this. And that's it.
Cool. Next, we'll go over to CJ, who's going to talk about context and context field.
So context is not simply a layout control mechanism. The parts of it that I'm going to show you, however, are one of the most popular parts for it. But whenever someone asks me to kind of explain context in a sentence or so, I say it's a graphical interface to Drupal hooks. And by that, what I mean is context, after you install it, gives you the option to define all these things called context. And when you take a look at any one of them, you can look, and it has a set of plugins that are called conditions, which are used to activate context. So the one that we're looking at right here is one called no sidebars, and this context will be active if the particular piece of content we're looking at, if the field full width field has a value of yes, or if we're at the project's path. And you can tell that it's or because require all conditions is not checked. And what will happen when this context is active is that the sidebar first and sidebar second regions are going to wind up being disabled, and it's going to add this little no sidebar class to the body tag, and that's going to be there so that we can do some background swapping. So I'm going to show you that part of it very quickly. Here I'm going to edit the about the ABC agency field, and I'm going to come and quickly set it to full width. And now there's no sidebar. The map is swung out, whereas before there was a listing of legislators and staff members and that type of thing. And so that's one sort of quick way that you can set up context to control your layout. Part of context that's built in for controlling your layout is if after you install context, you come into the settings and you use the context editor dialog, and you ask it to show you all the regions, you can do really cool things like the following. And this is, I always call it the context inline editor. It's called context dialog in the UI. But on any page where there's a block, you can select from a contextual link that you want to configure the layout. And when you do that, it'll show you all the contexts that are currently active at the path that you're on. And you can choose which one you want to modify. So I'm going to say I want to modify the home context. I'm going to slide this out of the way. And then it gives you the option to come and just start dragging pieces of your page around. So I'm going to put the Portland tweets over here. And I'm actually going to come through and I want to add a custom Twitter box here. And so what was it, Frank? DrupalCon layouts?
Yep.
For layout?
Layout, single.
All right. So we'll say there's going to be 10 there. So this is interacting with the box module. And so I've just created a new box and then placed it here on the page. I'm going to come and say that I'm done editing the layout and I'm ready to save my changes. And then I'm done making all of my edits. And you can see I've sort of changed the homepage layout and the way things are placed there. And so that's part of the system that just comes out of the box with context. If you wanted to use like the full width example I showed earlier, you'd look for a module called context bool field, and that'll just let you set up a reaction based on the value of a Boolean field. And there's plenty of plugins that people have written depending on how they want to be able to set up their conditions and their reactions. But context it's kind of most appropriate for your site in controlling layout if your site is very sort of rules-based. It's not everyone wants to just do whatever they want to do on every single page. If it's on pages where a particular tag has a particular value, I don't want sidebars, or I want a particular item that's in a sidebar. If you can set up the system for laying out your site using rules like that, that's when context is probably going to be a good option for you to look at.
Cool. Next we have Matt.
Well, I will be demoing the panels module, which is very much about letting people have whatever they want on every page, which is things I go by popular list on Drupal.org, so that sort of fits. But the core to sort of the panels layout philosophy is that every sort of page that you're using will have a content region in the middle, and that's the only region you need. And this is sort of really important. Like, unlike sort of traditional Drupal where you're going to have a whole lot of different regions and such, strapocastic words as cryptic, that this is not necessarily how people think about their sites. Like this is a very developer kind of thing. Like I want to put this piece with this thing in my cryptic middle, and that'll be where it shows up. People don't think like that. They want a sort of single region where they're going to have their content, and they want to have really full control over that. And that's what Panels is really good at doing. It says, instead of just going through the theme and having a bunch of regions, let's just take over the entire content variable. Let's use the Panels layout system, choose the kind of layout we want, and people do really awesome stuff with that. So to sort of take, an approach like this, you need to pull together a few modules. So you're going to need the Panels module, obviously, as well as the Chaos Tools module with the dependency. And then to actually have this kind of thing work on sort of normal pages, you get that with Page Manager. To do it for nodes or other kinds of entities, you can use Panelizer. And to do it on existing pages like the registration form, you can use Module Spentel, I believe, wrote or maintains PM existing pages, which is just a clever way to make everything a panel. And that's a philosophy that I think is really great. Drupal works well for layouts. If you want to see it in action, you can grab the Monopoly distribution that bundles all those modules and is a thing I'll demo, but basically says, let's make every page a panel, and let's allow them to play with the layouts. So you can take that content region, and you can have an area on the page that you can edit using a sort of front-end panels interface called the Panels ID, which Sandra and Earl and myself and with other people have improved. Because you can have one column, or you can have two columns, or you can have stacked columns, and that it's all because we've taken over that main area and we've done something with panels to sort of decide what we want. So this is great because each of those layouts that we make is a specific Chaos Tools layout plugin. They're really straightforward to write, and you can sort of sky the limit with that. Monopoly, if you download that as a distribution, ships with 31 of these things, cross-browser responsive already, so that you can actually go in and start building pages. So let's go ahead and show sort of what this would look like. You want to try it, as I said, this is on Drupal.org, it's a package distribution, Monopoly, and you can sort of go ahead and download it, or on Pantheon, you can just download it or install it using the web UI and play around with it. And once you do that, you'll get to something that looks like this. That's for the sort of Monopoly front page. I haven't done anything here but install it, so let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and make a page. So we'll add a promotional page for the DrupalCon. We'll hit the landing page. We'll call it DrupalCon. URL is DrupalCon. We'll add it to the menu, and go ahead. And this is on the back end printing of panels, a page manager page. It's going to limit that URL, and it's going to take over that content region. So if we go ahead and see, we hit customize, we sort of get this area right here. And so let's go ahead and we'll start to add some stuff. So this is using the Drupal panel panes module. We can go ahead and add stuff like images. I've got this Portland skyline thing I got up before, and we'll add that. And now we have the Portland skyline, which is cool. But we can go ahead and change that. So instead of having just a single column, we'll just have two columns. Our image is smaller, which is great. Go ahead and we'll add to this side. We'll go ahead and add a map. The address here, which I wrote down, right here. And we'll go ahead and throw a little map on there. You can see where we are, which is cool. And now we've saved it, so now we're starting to build this page. And we'll go ahead and we'll change this again. And we'll go ahead and add, throw a top bar on there. Got a stack layout. And we go hit that. And it's cool because it's sort of just swapping us out on a page basis. We're doing it just for this particular callback, but we can also go ahead and do that for anything that's of a type node or type user. Let's go ahead and add a little more text here. For folks that's not on meeting demo, I like vegetarian, so you tell this veggie listen, which is a great way to sort of get that filler text going. And this is cool because similar to what was demoed with for the content module, you can also drag these kinds of items around within the layout, and you can start to actually build pages that look like that, which is really neat. And this is something where, from a site editor perspective, I'm not having to go into the back end to do any of this stuff. I'm just sort of like deciding what I want based on the sort of content decisions I have. So if I want a table, so I talked about DrupalCon, and I can say it's awesome. And I'll go ahead and say this. And this is the kind of thing that a lot of content editors really like, because that. So go ahead and bring the map over, bring this to the side, and really have a lot of fun. And this is the kind of thing that the internet works for the video. That from a layout perspective, I think is a nice way to control your layout as a site developer. It's really easy to make these things. As a end user, it's really easy to change them. And from a just sort of like architectural perspective, it's nice because all of your layouts are chaos full of plugins. And if you use that kind of philosophy, you can just sort of make a bunch of plugins and make your site. And that becomes really neat. And so yeah, so definitely check it out. And if you're looking to do a site and use panels, you can have a lot of really great technology to control your layout.
Cool. Next we have Kris, who's going to show us a little bit of Drupal 8 layout stuff. So while he's getting set up, Matt, someone had a question for you. It was when you came to Drupal and had the vision of easier layout control, how strong was your technical background?
Obviously not writing a lot of this code. A lot of that comes from panels. But as a person, I'm not actually a particularly technical person. Like, I write a lot of code these days, and at Pantheon, we're obviously doing a lot of a pretty natural infrastructure. But my background's in library science. I was very interested in, as a librarian, how to present online content and how to control it. And I think when people come to Drupal, they're not necessarily looking to just code. They want to like make their idea on the internet. And that's one of the reasons I like those tools, because it gives sort of end users a lot more power to control their layout, and doesn't require them to know a lot about Drupal, because Drupal can be sort of hard.
So I'm going to demo some of the things this is vanilla Drupal 8. I don't have any patches applied to this at all. You can go and grab this out of the Drupal 8 repository right now and do everything I'm about to do. I won't guarantee that it's bug free. It is alpha. In fact, this isn't even alpha. This is like dev. And what I'd like to do here is I'm going to address a few of the things that have been shown here and how we're approaching them from a Drupal 8 perspective, and then just kind of talk about what we want the future to be there. Sam and I will kind of team that basically from this point forward. So I'm going to give you a real quick demo and show how that addresses certain topics that we've already covered, and we'll go from there. So in Drupal 8, we can... Is that better?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, that's okay. So in Drupal 8, we have a whole block section. This is going to look really familiar to you because it's pretty much super similar to what you've got in Drupal 7 land right now. The presentation is slightly different and will probably change more still, but fundamentally, this is the same thing as what you have today. And so if we come through here, the big thing that you'll notice is that if you scroll down to disabled, there isn't a ton of stuff sitting in there that's completely irrelevant to your life because you aren't using it. And this is really important when you start talking about really big sites like, I don't know, Drupal.org that has over 100 blocks on here, most of which may or may not be being used at any given time. And I don't have an administrative backend to Drupal.org, but I've heard that that's some of the slowest loading pages on the site. So, in a situation where you actually just want to deal with the blocks that you're dealing with, this is very good. And so what we've really got here is we've got the ability to come in and place new blocks. Now, I'm just going to go back for a second, and I'm going to draw your attention to the fact that we have a search block here. It's currently called the search form. We have tools, we have user logins, we have page content, we have a bunch of stuff, but specifically search here. So, let's see. I've got a little bit. There we go. So if I just close this, hey, I do have a search block. Great. So let's just add another one. Just to kind of show some of the things that traditionally Core hasn't been able to do. Core cannot take the same block and put it into two different regions. In fact, it can't have more than one instance of the same block at all. So if we come in here and we hit place block on search form, I'm going to say this is search form 2, and we will display the title. We're going to put it in sidebar second, and I'm just going to hit save on that. And now if I close this, you're going to see I have two search blocks, right? So, that's core, Drupal 8, no problem. We can move that around. We can do all sorts of stuff like that. Right? So this is something that, say, context module was really good at and did in a very nice way for all of the solutions you've seen today can do that. Hey, now Core can too. So that's a pretty big win. One of the other things that we can do here is we can add custom blocks. So actually, I haven't done this with this particular So I'm gonna save that testing block, and that created a content entity right then and there. We're now placing that content entity on the page somewhere. So we can come in and say that we want this to be in sidebar second as well. View mode, we do have view modes, except it's just full, so save. And hey, now if I close this, we're going to have lists and text sitting over here. That is, however, as I said, a content entity. So we can come into structure and go into custom block types and do something like add a new custom block type called image. Save. Let's manage its fields and select existing field image. Save. Save. And I don't actually need the body, so we'll just leave that. And now if we come into blocks, and I'll do this the other way and hit place blocks. If I add a custom block, which is the same thing, you'll see I can create any of the custom block types that we have. So if we were going to come in here to images and say, test image. Right, I'm going to go ahead and toss this into, I don't know, the header or something. I don't know, that's probably a really bad idea since this is powerful. Content, great, save. Right, now if I close this, I'm going to have an image block. I mean, that's just a straight up block. I can move that into any region, do whatever I want with it. Delete the instance of it, I'll still have the content sitting around. I could have more than one of those on the page, so again, if we wanted to, we could come into blocks, place blocks, and hey, since we already created that, we actually have the ability to place multiple instances of the same custom block multiple times. So I can go ahead and place block on that. I can also edit it here, but I'm not going to bother with that. And we can say sidebar first. And that did not show up. Well, it's a live demo, whatever. So it should work. I will check that out later. But so these are some of the things that core can actually actively do now. And so I think what I would like to do is probably spend this time just kind of talking about, let's see, we don't have a lot of time, it's 5:30. This is the last session though, right?
It is.
Okay, so we're just going to keep talking until they kick us out. You can feel free to stand. Okay? So I think we want to kind of talk about some of the things that we're doing in core right now in 8 to facilitate these things. There's quite a panels bias amongst the Drupal 8 maintainers of this initiative, but that doesn't specifically mean that we only want panels to be doable. Basically, if panels can be done, then virtually all of these solutions can be done. And so we've begun working really hard on the APIs to do that.
So there's a war going on. It's kind of amazing. Actually, we can all sit here on stage. Bye, everyone. Enjoy the drinking tonight. That's what you do at night at DrupalCon. You must know that. The fact that we can have this group of people on stage is kind of remarkable. The actual acrimony between the people died down some time ago, but 3 years ago in San Francisco, there was a very emotional moment when I hugged the maintainer of the context module, and I think it was the first time we hadn't wanted to punch each other in the face in like 2 or 3 years. But the war still actually goes on in code. With the way that Drupal works and the way that we put together pages, it's remarkable often that you can have something like panels coexist with something like context. What we're trying to do in Drupal 8 is, and trying to do this is not what Kris has shown thus far, is we're trying to write a base system that all of these different approaches can share. Common API, common principles, rigorously designed model that gives us a lot of benefits that performance engineers will care about, but also that front-enders will care about. A more unified rendering system that, again, all of these different systems, all the different interfaces and paradigms for organizing, really focused on let's customize this page and this page and this page, or let's set up broader rules and patterns and have things look this way when we're in this context or that context. The system should support all of those. This is what the Scotch Initiative is shooting for. Whether we make it or not is, well, it's going to be an interesting few weeks. But yeah, this is, what we're seeing here is the more linear growth that we've accomplished in Drupal 8 so far with the block system, but there are significant refactoring sitting in the branch that we affectionately refer to as Princess. So if you hear us talking about Princess, we're talking about the Scotch Initiative and our last great hope to get these changes in. If we don't, it'll be a shame. It'll be a big shame. But, you know, panels and context will continue, well, maybe as they are. We'll see. We may be able to do much Scotch and Contrib, but hopefully we'll be able to deliver Drupal 8 to all of you where you no longer have to be picking between these kind of options. It no longer need be such a religious war because the choices are not nearly so mutually exclusive. They are complementary. They are different UIs with the same rich paradigms underneath. And so you pick the UI that matches your use case as opposed to having to pick an entire site organizational paradigm and never be able to move from one to the other with any luck.
Cool. So with that, I guess that, you know, we kind of ran a little long, but nobody's kicked us out yet. So if folks have any specific questions, feel free to come up to the mic and ask. And
there's a mic right here in the middle.
Yeah,
so
sorry, mic's here in the center.
Ask any question.
I tweeted this, but I guess you don't have internet. I've noticed that there are significant performance concerns on high traffic sites when I'm rebuilding fresh cache, depending on which approach that I use for layouts. It's been panels, displays, and context. Going forward, how are you kind of looking at dealing with these performance initiatives or performance concerns with a fresh cache? And is there any way that each individual's own preferences, like you can kind of do a selling point, be like, my approach is better for performance because of blah.
She wants us to fight.
Yeah.
A little bit.
She's taunting.
I get a good response from the panel side. I mean, I think with a lot of these layout tools, like the actual layout process itself isn't necessarily simple. So the site down, it's more like letting people add as many things as they want, like to make the site progressively slower. I think the cool thing with panels though is that because each of the particular panes are sort of themselves entities that can be cached and sort of dealt with this way, panels does a lot of really great stuff on the back end. So you can actually set specific caching rules per individual item on the page. And that can be great if you've got a really intensive piece. You can just throw a 5-minute simple cache on it. You can set it up to use with ESI modules, or use ESI with varnish on it, or you can implement your own sort of caching system. I think a big selling point for panels is that it has a pluggable caching system and some default caching rules that come for every item in the system, and that can make your site load really fast.
So long as panels cache and ctools cache plugins aren't getting confused with each other, we're good.
So I would say in the context world, generally I don't find a lot of performance issues from context because the number of variants that you have when you're using that system is typically a lot smaller. So from my perspective in a panels world, you might have something that you have to define per every page on your site, for example, right? If you have a lot of pages on your site, then you have a lot of things to define. If you clear cache, there's a lot of things to reload and that type of thing. Whereas in a context world, it's typically more of, we have a couple of rules that are defined, and the sum total of rules that have to be reloaded when something is cached, or when cache is cleared, is less than the sum total of things that have to be reloaded when panels, or for example, when cache is cleared there. So I would say, I always kind of think of it as context is like kind of a database normalization of your rules, but it's very constrained, right? You can't vary from the normalization, right? So if you use context and use a system like context field, which can create a context for every single content item on your site, then you've basically got all of those rules for every piece of content, and you're in the same situation that you would be in sort of in a panels world from my perspective. So really, it's how you use it is really how I find context affects performance. And generally, the pages being cached at the front end sort of alleviate. It gives you time to sort of rebuild your caching and that type of thing. So yeah.
Was that question to Kirstof as well for Display Suite?
To kind of everyone. It was
Okay.
if they want to answer it.
Yeah.
If you don't, that's cool.
No comment.
Yes, no comment. When it comes to template field, because it exists as a field, caching is done at the node level typically. Where you could definitely run into issues, I would say, is when you start embedding blocks or things into WYSIWYG. So, in the examples that I showed before, we lean pretty heavily on WYSIWYG and embedding beans and blocks. When you do that, you have to, clear it. When you make a change to, say, then a bean or your block, okay, you have to be fairly aggressive in the caches that you clear because it may hit on any number of pages. So there's definitely challenges there, but typically if you're not going for that level of reusability across things, you're not embedding blocks or something into your WYSIWYG. It's a very scalable system. Not to brag too much or something, but the Robinhood site has seen traffic spike increases of over 100 times in the course of an hour. Traffic spikes from actually just the other week we saw a 19,000% increase in concurrent users over a few hours, and we were making content updates during that same time, and it was cruising like a boss. And,
I'll do this quick. Regarding Display Suite, Display Suite itself is really fast. It doesn't actually do that much. It swaps a template file and then just moves some stuff around. The biggest problem that you might see is actually the problem in core with Field API, which we are actually heavily working on. We added some performance issues and patches. It's now in the latest Drupal 7, and also in Drupal 8, we actually moved some information from field formatter settings to a new config entity, which is called the entity display. That object actually knows what it has to render, which makes it faster. And it actually is faster. We benchmark it. We have to benchmark everything right now in Drupal 8. So it's usually a combination of too many fields in your Drupal installation. If you have, basically field API with say 100 fields, don't do it. Drupal is not built for that, which is sad in a way, but yeah, that won't work.
Cool, next question.
Okay. One use case that I've seen for people that use organic groups and want to delegate the ability to handle layout. And I'm curious in terms of what different recommendations you guys have for your various solutions. Which of them work well with that kind of access control approach, and which would you recommend basically trying somebody else?
I can answer that for context. So context is pretty much an all or nothing approach out of the box to layout control. So if you have permission to edit one context, you have permission to edit all the contexts. So if in a situation where you wanted to give someone layout control and you were using context and you needed sort of segregated ability there, I would say it's likely not the best choice for you to start with. You can certainly write some pieces to insulate someone from getting all the way to the back end and give them access to the inline editor, for example, that I showed, and couple that with some rules to basically say this context is available when this group, this context is active for this group, and that's the only one that they can see. The out of the box, the permission control doesn't naturally lend itself to
Is a context an entity?
I'm sorry?
Is a context an entity?
No, context is it's not described to the entity API. It uses it's ctools. Is basically.
Are they ctools as portables at this point?
Yeah, context is ctools.
Good on you.
Yeah.
In the panels world, there's a module called OT panels, which adds a new access permission that's for D6, and then for D7, you can, using Page Manager, you can set up a pretty clean way to sort of use that IP tool I was demoing, and only give it to, you can use Panelizer to say, here's the OG node, and you can change the layout if you are, have the ability to edit the node, which you do with its node access rules. And the Open Atrium, the new virtual page for D7, uses sort of an approach like this. So if you're interested in that, you can check out that and sort of see how it works together. And then and it works pretty well. It gives the people who know the nodes the ability to change the layouts and use all the tools essentially.
I'm just going to like reiterate on that one. Analyzer, Page Manager, and OG together. So that way, an IP. That's the right solution.
Template field doesn't have much, doesn't have any direct integration with OG right now. We just haven't run into that use case, but because it exists as a field, it would be interactable in the same way that you would control field access through OG and other ways. There's also ways to lock down permissions for who has access to create or use particular layouts. So you can restrict that by role, and so adding in OG access there wouldn't be particularly hard.
I'll be answering another question at the same time. People often ask me whether we at work use panels or Page Manager. We actually do. And what Matt just told, we actually do that as well. So we use Page Manager and panels to like use and control the big components on the page and have variants and stuff like that. And then we use Display Suite just for like those little content entities. So, but Display Suite itself does not know anything about OG. It shouldn't. It just has to know something about entities. That's it. So,
cool. Next.
So I know context is exportable to features. The sites that we run, we need to export our layouts to code. So to me, it's important to know: does Display Suite, does single node, and does panels allow you to export all of your layouts completely to code instead of just in the database? And is it just because they're fields, or?
Yes, the settings from Display Suite are actually also ctools exportables. So one of the things that people usually forget, there are a couple of settings that are also in core, but you can use strong app for that, for instance. So usually they forget like a little variable called field settings and something with view modes as well. And then I get a question and I don't export it. But yeah, all the rest is exportable.
It's a very big little variable.
Yes.
Template API was built API first, so it was actually designed to be written in code the first time, like from the beginning. So yes, you can put everything into code, and then it's also available if you build your layouts in the admin UI. That's the ctools export UI, so there's ctools exportable, so you can do that.
Yeah, and the panels layouts like kind of code and you can use them with like there are some tools that let you build it in the UI.
But those are exportable too.
And those are exportable too.
We all love ctools exportables.
Yeah. If you go the panels route and you're working on something like a node, there is a magic variable that you have to export for that to some long name thing with Page Manager in it somewhere. It's a total pain in the butt, but you should be able to find it if you're exporting the features.
Thank you.
Hi. My question's very uncomplicated. I don't know much about Drupal yet, and I'm just absorbing them. Very intrigued by translations, which came up quickly earlier on, and we didn't really touch on it. So I'm going to ask a really stupid question, which is, your thing doesn't actually take information and translate it, right? You don't say like Google Translate. Your translations, you still have to hire people to turn that into good. That's what I think.
Yes. There's no magic translation in Drupal.
No magic translation.
I'm not sure I should be talking about this. I know of someone who is working on magic translation stuff.
So maybe come talk to Kris afterwards, and he can point you to someone to go talk to.
Maybe I can. I don't know. I don't know whether I can or not, but I might be able to.
What we've done is we took some of our text and we dumped it into Google Translate, but that's Korean. And then we took that Korean and we put it back and translated it back to English for
That doesn't work well.
It was the most, it's like mad.
Well, it's really funny. It's entertaining.
Yeah.
Mad loops.
So traditionally I've been a big fan of the context module, but I've noticed it's still in beta for Drupal 7, and I sort of get the feeling it hasn't gotten as much love as it might deserve, and I'm wondering what the current state of development for context is.
Sure. So the current state is I commit as many patches as I can as fast as I can. The beta state of it, there's a D7 stable release tag on a couple of issues, and they generally center around multilingual and internationalization and international translatable blocks and that type of thing. And the reason I haven't moved it out of beta is simply because I'm not confident that some of the API bits of context aren't going to change. But if the fact that
should still be alpha.
Yeah. But I would say if beta is what is stopping you, I will cut a release candidate or a stable and just make any changes in a 2.x. I mean, we use it on production sites all the time. You know, I'm obviously a big fan of context, and yeah, the beta is kind of a label to me, but it's stable enough for production, so I could make it a 1.0 if that's of concern to you.
And how about the dev, because the beta has been out for a little while too?
I'm sorry, say that.
Saves the dev because the beta has been out for a little while too.
So usually I wind up with a couple of days on a weekend every couple of months, and I'll be able to go and review all the patches and commit. They usually come in swaths for me, so there'll be like 15 issues that I get to commit and review and that type of thing at a time. So usually it's when the next bulk window of time comes by to me is when the commits happen, and I try to cut another beta.
I guess I have some more comments than questions, but I'm wondering where the antipathy between the different implementation is coming from. Is this, if you want to bring in a core, obviously each one is going to be suitable for different use cases, and there's a lot of overlap. So one thing that I'm kind of concerned is from keeping the presentation a bit too close to the content, and especially the field, template field API. My objective would be to separate that as far as possible, especially when we get into responsive design, and I would be concerned about having a layout designer where editor of the site would come on and do some visioning, a magazine or newspaper kind of thing out, and it doesn't really adapt well to responsive. Not that any of these solutions can't handle responsive, but allowing them to kind of be imprisoned by this mindset of magazine kind of layout. So these are the things that I would be concerned about.
Check the switch.
That's the antipathy is
historical, and it's actually not anybody on this panel.
No, it's not anybody on this panel. There's nothing community on there. So,
and we like DevC, but they squatted a namespace we already had.
Yeah. Apart from the interpersonal stuff, though, it was really they were competing approaches to site design. Initially, there were workstations bounced out, came out, and we were like, there's a bunch of stuff we could have worked on if we had talked earlier, and we never got to that. As for one going in core versus the other, not there's going in core. There's something different going in core. Like I said, it's a common underlying API. There's no problem that I've heard described here on either side that is not fully compatible with what we're talking about. Really, a lot of the issues between the two systems have been that in order to do full-on page layout, you have to establish page context, like little C context, understanding the environment in which you're operating. Because Drupal doesn't do that formally,